Yeah, I don't know that any of my talents are hidden. I think I'm just, you get all my talents, whatever you think of them. I'm going to wear them all on my sleeve. I asked about those because Jesus has kind of been putting, we might consider a special talent. It's really a God given ability of his, but he's been putting it on display. And it's been getting him into trouble. Jesus has been healing and doing some things like that. And the Pharisees, these guys that are hanging around, don't like it. Thing is, though, is Jesus isn't using his gifting or his special talent to show off or to be at a party or to be super cool. He's actually using it to show his heart. And the heart of Jesus is what we're going to focus on today. How we should try to have that same heart of Jesus as ourselves. So we'll think about it like this. We should put the heart of Jesus at the heart of yourself. Put the heart of Jesus at the heart of yourself. Let the heart of Jesus be what drives us and motivates us. So we're in our series on Mark, if you haven't been with us, all about the life and ministry of Jesus, learning about him so that we can live like him. Before we dive into learning about his heart, do what we do every week and just quickly recap what we saw last week as a way to refresh our memories. Last week we talked about Jesus' new thing. Jesus ushered in this brand new way of doing things. He came and nothing else would be the same. And this is when we heard the famous analogies of the wedding guest and how you wouldn't fast when the bridegroom is there, and the new wine into old wineskins, and the new cloth on an old garment. So he came and nothing would be the same. So we rejoice in Jesus. No matter the circumstances we're in, we make the choice to rejoice because he is with us in the midst of everything. And then we stay devoted to God. We spend time with him through spiritual practices. And last week we focused on fasting and solitude as two we should try. And then we embrace God's new thing for us. It's always God's new thing. It's always about God. But when he calls us to do something new, big or small, we embrace it, we take it on. And then we don't contain Jesus. We don't hold Jesus back. That we allow him in and we allow him to change us and transform us. He stays the same. We looked at that famous verse in Hebrews, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He stays the same, but we don't. We change through Jesus and we let him come out of us. So that was kind of Jesus' new thing. Today we're going to dive in and we're going to see more about his heart. We're going to be at the end of chapter 2 and into the beginning of chapter 3 of Mark. It'll be right up there, as Kyle's already got it up there, starting behind me, bookmarked in your tables. If you're following along, tablets, phones, computers, all good. I will be in the NIV translation. Let's look the end of chapter 2. This will be verses 23 to 28. It says this. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples walked along. They began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" He answered, "Have you never read what David did when his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat. And he also gave some to his companions. Then he said to him, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord over even the Sabbath." We're going to stop there. All right, so it's Sabbath. Walking along, Jesus' disciples pick some grain. Seems like no biggie, right? Walking along, hungry, pick some grain. Who cares? Pharisees care, because that's what they do. Now they deemed that the picking of the grain would have been reaping a harvest or reaping the grain, which was prohibited on Sabbath. If we go back to Exodus 35, you must rest one day a week, even during plowing and harvest season. All right? So they shouldn't have been doing this according to their interpretation of Sabbath law. Now they question Jesus again because they're his disciples. He is responsible for his followers. Also, they want to come get Jesus. So in pretty typical Jesus fashion, he gives a response, and he goes back to the Old Testament, and he uses David as an example. This is pretty smart from Jesus, because David would have been a respected figure to the Pharisees. He would have been seen as a they call pious man, meaning he was very devoted and stayed connected to God, strong commitment to God. And the idea with this story is this from Jesus, that the need that is there takes precedent over the ceremony or ritual of the Sabbath. They were hungry and in need. That takes precedent over this whole not working on the Sabbath. He said the Sabbath was made for man. The Sabbath should benefit people. It should help people. The Pharisees have turned Sabbath into a burden when it should be a blessing. The Pharisees saw the law as a way to purify themselves before God, so it had to be followed to the letter. Jesus is like, the law comes from God. I'm from God, so I can interpret how it's used. I am Lord over the Sabbath. So he's not nullifying it or getting used to it. He's kind of just redirecting how it's used. So I want to look first at the fact that Sabbath was made for man, made for us. Sabbath is for us. The Hebrew Sabbath was a weekly day of rest and worship, which was observed on the seventh day of the week. We get this all the way back, in Genesis, in the creation narrative, when God created for 6 days and rested. It's given to us, we just have to take it. Now, in my experience personally and talking with others, it's easier to find just about anything than to find rest. I would look for something that's really hard to find. I find like treasure hunts kind of fascinating. I don't know why, but I do. According to Sky History, there is a shipwreck called the Flor de la Mar that is known as the Holy Grail of shipwrecks. This hasn't been found. It was a Portuguese ship in the 16th century. Over the years, it had deteriorated, and eventually it sunk in a storm in 1511 off the coast of Sumatra, carrying what they said to be the equivalent of 2 billion in riches that belonged to the king. Treasure hunters have spent millions trying to find it to no avail. There's like, people are debating over who would even own it if it got found. It's fascinating. It's never been found. Does rest ever feel like a sunken treasure you cannot find? God gave us rest. We have to find it and take it. Hebrews 4, 9 through 11 says, there remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works, just as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest so that no one will perish by following their example of disobedience. We've talked about receiving and accepting other things that God gives us: forgiveness, grace, truth, direction, love. Do we take and accept his rest? Now, it used to be this big badge of honor to not rest, right? I worked the most hours of anybody in my division. I worked 30 hours of overtime. I logged the most. I worked myself to the bone. I don't need no rest. Rest is for the weak. Now, here's the thing. God says work. It's there. But he also says rest. Rest in him. Rest with him. Think about when you're in go, go, go mode. How well do you hear from God? How much time do you spend with God? How much quality time do you spend with your family or friends? When you're always exhausted, how well do you follow Jesus? And I get that it's hard to wrap our heads around, but God didn't make us for exhaustion and burnout. He intentionally gave us something to avoid that: Sabbath, rest. So I want to look at rest maybe a little bit differently. And I want to see rest as preparation, not recovery. Let's try to look at it this way. See rest as God preparing you for what he's going to do next and how he's going to go through you and work through you in that next week. See, when rest is just recovery, it's like, okay, I busted my butt for 6 days. I just got to recover. Maybe I can get back to zero so that I can start again on Monday or whatever day it is and burn out again. Use rest as a way to get ready. Actually rest. Sit down. Take a nap. Go for a slow walk. Slow. No zone 2 cardio or anything like that. Slow. Maybe not today. It's raining. Unless you like the rain, go for it. I like the rain. Sit with your kids. Read a book. Watch football. Have a nice meal. But do what is restful for you, where you will actually rest. And then worship. Part of Sabbath, it says rest and worship. Part of Sabbath, and you don't have to get up here with a guitar and sing songs. It can be prayer, reading your Bible, just sitting and being with God as part of Sabbath, with your heart on God. Talk to him about what's to come. And then one of the most important parts is make it a rhythm every week. This is how God intended it to be. 6 days on, 1 day of rest. It's not a once in a blue moon when I can fit it into my schedule. Think about a drummer in a band. A really good drummer isn't the one that plays the loudest fills or the biggest cymbals or that's in a cage that spins upside down while it's on fire while they're coming down in a show. That's all really cool, but the best drummers are the ones that just keep time. They keep rhythm. They keep the band together and keep things moving. That's what Sabbath does. It's your drummer of your life. It just keeps you together, keeps things moving. It's helpful. So plan for it when it works for you, but do it. It's for you. It's from God because he has a heart for you. He doesn't want you to burn out or to be exhausted because he cares for you. So make Sabbath part of your life. And then remember, Jesus is Lord over the Sabbath, meaning he can interpret how Sabbath and other laws, really, are used. He's saying, let's not get caught up in the rules and regulations of Sabbath. Let's just get to the heart behind it. You ever play a game that has like a lot of rules? We played a family game of Uno the other night, very intense in the Woodhouse. I've heard different like house rules of Uno even. Do you draw cards until you can play, or do you just draw one? Can you stack the draw twos and all this stuff? Well, then I told Jeremiah there's a new version of Uno out that he wants to try, and I kind of do too. It's Uno No Mercy, where they've added a whole bunch of rules and stuff to it. There's a wild reverse draw 4, so a wild that reverses the order, and the next person's got to draw 4. There's a skip everyone, so it skips all the way back to you. There's a draw 10 card, a discard all. You're supposed to swap 7s and 0s, and there's a mercy rule, where if somehow you end up with 25 cards in your hand, you lose. You're out. I think that's great. But it can be so easy to get caught up in the rules and miss the point of just playing the game. And this can happen with the Sabbath, or even any way of just following Jesus, getting so caught up. What are the rules? How do I do it best? That we just miss what we're actually doing. So think about what Sabbath actually is again. Rest and worship. If we look at Sabbath, that can look different for all of us. As long as you're resting and worshiping, you're good. That's what God wants. Don't get caught up in the strict guidelines, because when we do that, it's really easy to compare. Like, oh, I had my phone off for an hour longer than you. I'm Sabbathing way better. That type of deal. That's getting legalistic about it is the phrase we use. And we do this in other areas of Christianity, any of them, without even realizing it. I read my Bible twice a day. I pray before and after meals. I have missed church in 6 months. I'm doing way better. I'm awesome. It's got to stop, because this isn't what God's after. You're not trying to be Christian MVP, because here's what happens. You're trying to climb a ladder to God that doesn't exist. The Pharisees thought it did, but it doesn't, because just following all these rules and doing it all better isn't what gets us closer to God. And Jesus even says this. He's like, nah, that's not what it's about. It's about Jesus' heart, not our heads. Our head says, here's all the things I need to do. They're good. This will make me the best I can be and closer to God. Jesus' heart says, here's all the things I'm giving you. Use them to get closer to me, to be a healthy you, the you I called you to be, and share me with others. Right? It's easy to think if I just follow all the rules right, then I'm good. But if you follow the heart of God right, as a byproduct, you'll get the rules just fine. That's the whole idea with this series. Learning Jesus' life, his ministry, his words, to see what he's about. And then let that become what we're about. So be about Jesus before being about the rules. The Pharisees constantly miss this. We're going to see it again right now in the start of chapter 3. We did it. We're through 2 chapters, 14 to go. We can do it. All right? Mark 3, verses 1 to 6. Another time, Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Then Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. He said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. All right, so we have another Sabbath example. And Jesus is going to get in trouble again. He's in the synagogue, and he's being watched. The Pharisees are trying to find a way to accuse Jesus to come at him. They've had enough of this guy. And there's a man there, man at synagogue with a shriveled hand. Now, the Pharisees don't care about this man at all, but they know Jesus heals. So they're watching Jesus to see if he might heal him on the Sabbath. And Jesus knows what's happening. So he brings the man up, says, "Stand on up." And he poses a question. Everybody could hear it, but this is very much directed at the Pharisees. And he says, "On the Sabbath, is it lawful to do good or do evil? To save somebody's life or kill, literally take their life?" It's an either or for Jesus here, because Jesus has the ability to heal. You either do the good thing and heal and save this man's life. He probably couldn't work with the shriveled hand, would have been probably outcast by his society. So by healing him, Jesus would do good and save his life. And Jesus uses life or death here intentionally, because on the Sabbath you are permitted to heal in a life or death situation. That's how Jesus sees this. The Pharisees don't. Pharisees don't see this. Now for us, the answer seems pretty easy, right? You heal the guy. Obviously, you heal him. But the Pharisees, this would mean abandoning that strict observance to the law that they have. The law that makes them so awesome in the eyes of God and their community. But to admit they do nothing means they'd admit that they'll do evil and cause harm. So they just sit silently. And they're quiet. They're stubborn. They are the opposite of humility and gentleness. See, Jesus runs on goodness. They run on obligation. And this makes Jesus mad, because they don't get it. They're stubborn. Then Jesus heals the man because it's the right thing to do. It's the goodness from the heart of Jesus. So he heals him. And now the Pharisees are mad. Jesus just defied the law. This was an outright defiance in the synagogue. On Sabbath, he healed. On the Sabbath, he is a threat to tradition, our religious nature. They're ready to kill him. Now they're ready to do evil on the Sabbath. So they plot to kill him. Jesus offered the man with shriveled hand grace, and it humbled the man and healed him. That same grace made the Pharisees completely livid. Grace never does nothing. It always does something, and Jesus showed this, all by healing this man. There were two options for Jesus. Do good and save. Do evil and kill. That was it. There was no middle ground, no gray area. Who here prefers black and white over a gray area in general? Kind of in that? Maybe black, maybe gray. According to Google, because of course I looked it up, many people actually say they prefer the gray area because it provides for more nuance, complexity, and different perspectives. It would be like this. I like some of Taylor Swift's music, but I find her and Travis Kelce annoying, so I'm in the middle in the gray area. In general, I don't really like pineapple on pizza, but in the right scenario, some jalapenos and some Canadian bacon, it's okay. Gray area. You're in the middle. Okay? In this scenario, it's not gray for Jesus. It is black or white. Kill and do evil, do good, and save. And I think if we try to boil this one down a little bit, it's about being selfish versus being selfless. The Pharisees are selfish. Their reason for not helping this man was they would be breaking a rule that might hurt them or get them into trouble. It is about them. Jesus was selfless. He was looking to do good, looking to help others no matter what. The heart of Jesus is selfless, and that's where we want to be. Selfish makes it about us. Selfless makes it about others. Now, this is not to say that we aren't aware of ourselves and working on things in ourselves. We are. But we also need to be looking to others. Philippians 2:3-4 says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others." So be aware if every situation you're in or every decision always comes back to I this or me that. I might look bad. I might be seen differently if I do that. Versus the good and right thing to do is to do this or to step in here or to help here. So we look for the good for others. What can you do and what need can you meet? Open your heart, open your eyes, and look for them. We are now heading into Thanksgiving and Christmas season. There will be needs to be met. So we see what we can do. And here's the thing. They are all important, no matter the size. What matters isn't the size of the need, but the size of your heart in meeting it. If you selflessly meet a need, then you've done what Jesus is asking. It may not seem like it's the equivalent of healing this man with a shriveled hand, and that's okay. Jesus did what he could do. He asked us to do what we can do. So see it and don't avoid it, and don't worry about what it looks like to others. We might be worried about a negative vibe that we get from people. They might say, and these are things unfortunately I've heard, why would you help them? Just take care of you. Don't worry about them. They wouldn't need your help if they just got off their butt and worked. They wouldn't need your help if they hadn't started using drugs or gotten pregnant or gotten divorced. This is all on them. It's on them. These are statements, unfortunately, I've heard, and they got to stop. This is not what it's about. It's not about the why. The need is there, and our concern is to help a need if we see it and we can. The why, Jesus will take care of that with them. And maybe if we are helping, we get to find out the why and get to know somebody's story and get to get closer to them or bring them closer to Jesus. That's awesome. But we meet a need even if other people might see it negatively. And the same goes for the positive. Flip it. We do it for the person that we're helping, not for ourselves. There's nothing wrong with feeling good or accomplished or satisfied when you help somebody. That will happen, but it's not about that. We don't help somebody to feel that way. We help them for them. Same thing with somebody liking a post or patting you on the back. That's all fine if it happens, but it's all about the person we're helping. We're selfless to be about others and serve and meet needs. That is what Jesus does and what Jesus looks for. Now, on the flip side, when that's not happening, Jesus gets mad. In this story, Jesus got mad. It says he looked at the Pharisees in anger with their stubborn hearts. Now, we are all human, and we all get angry, right? Sometimes it's really like normal stuff. It's good stuff we get angry. Sometimes we get irrationally angry. Tuesday, I was going to the dentist. I was going to be right on time, which for me is 5 to 7 minutes early, because early is on time is late, late's unacceptable. That's on my ride. So I was going and I hit 3 red lights in a row, and I promise you the third one was the longest one in town because I sat there forever. Or think about you're cleaning up underneath the table here. You get up and you smack your head on the table as you get up. We'll get mad. Those of us with kids, I just vacuumed that, and 10 seconds later, there's crumbs all over it, right? Been there. Or you just hang that towel up all nicely and just falls right off. This one's coming. You just finished snow blowing, and up there comes the plow to plow your driveway back in. See, Mark. I knew Mark would appreciate that one. So this makes us irrationally angry. But we're Christians, right? We don't get mad, right? We're Christians. It's all rainbows, butterflies, pumpkin pie with whipped cream, right? It's all good. No, we get angry sometimes. Things do make us mad. Jesus even shows us this. He shows us something that should make us mad. Look at why Jesus got mad. He's mad at the Pharisees. But he's not mad at the Pharisees because they're coming at him or targeting him. He's mad at how they precisely give no care to this man that is in need. A man in their that should be in their community, that's hurt, in need, cast out by the community because of it, and there's a need that could be met. They could help him, and they refuse to do it. They refuse to do good. And make no mistake, this is an outright refusal on their part to do any good. Jesus gets mad. It's a heartfelt, righteous anger that Jesus feels. It's that heartfelt, righteous anger. The first thing we need to do with this is look at ourselves a little bit and ask the difficult question of, would Jesus be angry with us at all? And this isn't a good thing to look at. It's not a fun thing to look at, but it's important. We need to look inside of ourselves. Now, he might not be angry, but let's take a look. Are there people we have pushed out of our lives that we shouldn't have? Are there people that we're refusing to help, maybe even just pray for, because we don't like them, we don't want to do it, and we'd be okay if their life got knocked down a few pegs? As Christians, all of us, big church everywhere, are there people we keep at arm's length because they're different or difficult or don't fit the mold or might not serve us or are just different? We have to be willing to take that look, even if it's hard and it hurts, because that's the only way we work towards change. Look inside of us, not to feel bad, but to see where we need to let God break through the hardness of our hearts to get to the softness of his heart. So we work towards having the heart of Jesus. And then we get angry. We get angry about what makes Jesus angry. When the kingdom is not being lived out, when people are being mistreated and cast out of society and seen as less than. We can even see people getting angry about this. We go back to the Old Testament. Nehemiah chapter 5, verses 6 through 8. When I, Nehemiah, heard their outcry on these charges, I was very angry. I pondered them in my mind and accused the nobles and officials. I told them, you're charging your own people interest. So I called together a large meeting to deal with it and said, as far as possible, we've bought back our fellow Jews who were sold to the Gentiles. Now you're selling your own people only for them to be sold back to us. They kept quiet because they could find nothing to say. It's okay to get angry when things aren't as they should be. It's okay to get angry about poverty and the lack of resources available for those in poverty. It's okay to be angry that there are many that need mental health help and resources and there isn't enough available. It's okay to be angry that there are people deemed as less than and outcasts in our community. It's okay to be angry about that because it's not the kingdom of God. Be angry about that. Have a heartfelt, righteous anger. It should be upsetting. But then we do something with that anger. And we respond like Jesus. We channel the anger like Jesus did. And look what he does. He doesn't go on the attack against the Pharisees. He could. They want to kill him, so they're attacking against him, but that's not where he goes. He goes and addresses the need. He heals the man. So if you're upset about lack of funding or resources to a group in need, don't go on TikTok or Twitter and put that organization or a politician on blast. That might sound like more fun, but the heart of Jesus would be respond to the need, to go volunteer or donate if you can, to get involved. Channel that anger like Jesus. Heartfelt anger needs a heartfelt response. It's that heart of God. We'll wrap up here. The heart of God. It is a heart for you. God has a heart for all of us. Part of that is he gave us Sabbath so we can rest, be refreshed, and be at our best self. And that we have time with him. And we make that a rhythm of life. And his heart's for us because he's Lord over the Sabbath, meaning we don't have to get caught up in the rules and just doing it right. It's not about being better at any part of being a Christian. We focus on the heart of God and his heart behind giving us everything he has, including that rest. And we let that get us closer to him. And his heart is selfless. He looks for the good to do, the needs to be met. We want to have that heart, to see the needs, to see what we can do, without worrying what others think or putting the focus back on ourselves, but we look for things we can do for others. And then his heartfelt anger. He's mad at the way others are treated. We should get angry about the things that make Jesus angry. But then respond like Jesus, not in attack mode, but in get involved mode. Serve and help where we can. Help address the issue in some way. So we make the heart of God our heart. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this morning. And God, simply we thank you for the heart that you have. The heart that you have for us and the heart you have for others. God, I pray that that heart would take over us. That whatever that needs to look like, if our hearts have been hardened, that you would break through that hardness, God. And even though that hurts and is difficult, God, that you would start to break through that to let us see the softness of your heart. And God, then that we would look to the needs of others, to other people around us, and show them your heart. Let that come out of us. We would help those that we're able to help, God, no matter the size of the need they have. God, that we would be upset at the things that upset you, that we wouldn't feel nothing for people that are in need. And God, that we'd get involved in how we can. We would share your heart by sharing ourselves with others. So God, I thank you again for this morning and for your heart. In your name, amen.